never stopped here. It came sideways with the wind, like tiny knives, scratching at skin, seeping into every fold of fabric. It muted everything. Footsteps, voices, even the thud of boots on frozen mud. The NATO Forward Operating Base Bravo sat at the edge of nowhere, a cluster of steel containers, radio masts, and armored vehicles half buried in drifts. Floodlights pierced the darkness in white beams, searching the black sky as if expecting something to fall from it. Captain James "Hawk" Harrington stood alone by the perimeter fence, watching snow swirl into the floodlight haze. The cold bit deep, but he didn't move. His gloved hand was wrapped around something in his pocket, a folded envelope, inside an invitation. Boston High School graduation, Emily Harrington. In blue ink below the print, "Dad, I saved you the best seat in the house. Don't be late." He'd read it 100 times in the past month. Imagined walking into that school gym, seeing her in cap and gown, being just dad again. Not captain, not soldier, just father. For the first time in years, he had a leave date. For the first time in years, he believed he would make it. Boston, 5,000 miles away morning. Sunlight spilled into a modest suburban kitchen. Emily Harrington sat at the table, scrolling through messages on her phone. Her mother, Sarah, moved between stove and counter, flipping pancakes the way James used to when he was home. "Your dad called last night," Sarah said, sliding a plate in front of her. Emily looked up, hopeful. "He said he's still good for tomorrow. He's catching the first flight out." Emily smiled faintly. "He'll be there. I know he will." But her voice had that careful hope, the kind you use when you've been let down before, but still want to believe. Back at Base Bravo, speakers crackled with the clipped voice of the duty sergeant. "Captain Harrington, report to Ops, Priority Alpha." The operations tent was warm from diesel heaters, with the smell of strong coffee. Maps and satellite prints covered the tables. Colonel Marcus Doyle, tall and sharp-featured in a British Army cold-weather jacket, looked up as James entered. "4 international aid workers," Doyle began, sliding a red-sealed folder toward him. "2 Americans, 1 Canadian, 1 British. Last seen in Grid Echo 9, inside separatist-controlled territory. Intel says they'll be moved across the border by tomorrow night. Once that happens, they're gone." James opened the folder. The photos showed tired, smiling faces in UN blue vests. Names, ages, roles. People who'd come here to help, now pawns in someone else's war. "When do we leave?" James asked quietly. Doyle hesitated. "You've got family back home. Graduation, isn't it?" James's jaw flexed. "Yeah. Captain, if you don't lead this op, the odds drop fast. Sometimes courage isn't about who we fight, but what we give up to fight it all." The words hit harder than the wind outside. James closed the folder. "I'll brief the team." That night, James sat on his bunk, typing on his phone. "Emily, if I'm not there tomorrow, know it's because I'm doing the job that keeps you safe. I'll be with you in spirit, always proud, always your dad." He stared at the glowing screen, then locked the phone without sending it. He couldn't make it final. Not yet. The convoy rolled out under a black sky. Three armored MRAPs crept over the icy terrain, headlights dimmed to slits. Inside, the air was tense. The only sound the rattle of gear and the low murmur of comms checks. James sat by the rear hatch, feeling the paper of Emily's invitation press against his chest with every bump in the road. Parallel. Graduation. Morning Boston's winter was gentler than the war zones. But the air was still crisp as Emily stepped outside in her gown. Sarah snapped photos on her phone, trying to capture the moment. Emily smiled, but her eyes kept drifting to the driveway, as if a green duffel bag and a familiar face might appear there at any second. Back in Eastern Europe, The lead vehicle halted. Through the windshield, a burned-out village crouched in the snow, roofs caved, windows black. The team dismounted, rifles up, their boots crunching softly. They moved street to street, stacking at doorways, breathing clouds into the night. Through comms, the point man's voice came low. Thermal shows 4 heat signatures in the schoolhouse. No movement outside. James felt his pulse quicken. On my mark, breach and clear. The Boston High School auditorium buzzed with parents, teachers, and proud friends. The principal stepped to the microphone. Emily sat in the second row, her eyes flicking to the empty seat marked reserved. The music swelled. Names were read, hands shook, caps tipped. When her name came, she stood tall, because her father had taught her to walk with pride, even when the people you want beside you aren't there. The breach was fast and violent. The door blew inward with a bang. Flash bangs flooding the dark with white light. Shouts, boots pounding. 4 aid workers huddled in the corner, hands over their heads. James's men moved to secure them. But then the first shots cracked from the far side of the room. Glass shattered, splinters flew. The team returned fire, pushing toward the shooters. As they pulled the hostages out, an enemy fighter opened up from the rooftop. Rounds smacked into the snow, kicking up icy plumes. Private Kane, the youngest in the unit, went down with a cry, blood staining his sleeve. James didn't think. He broke cover, dragging Kane toward the MRAP, rounds snapping past his helmet. Every step felt like he was walking further from Boston, from Emily's stage, from the seat he was supposed to fill. Engines roared. The convoy tore out of the village, bullets chasing them into the dark. James pressed a field dressing to Kane's wound, his gloves slick with blood. The hostages sat wide-eyed, alive because of the choice he'd made. Back in Boston, the ceremony ended. Families embraced, laughter and flash photography filling the hall. Emily stepped outside into the cold night air, her gown rustling in the breeze. She looked at her phone. No missed calls. Hours later, back at Base Bravo, James finally sent the message. "I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I was exactly where I needed to be. I love you, kiddo." He expected silence. Instead, the reply came minutes later. "I know, Dad. I love you too. Come home safe." Months later, the war didn't stop, but James made it back to Boston in spring. When he knocked on the door, Emily opened it before he could speak. They didn't need words. The hug said everything. Later in the backyard under string lights, Emily pulled out her graduation cap. "Missed the ceremony," she said with a smile, "but you can still be the first to sign it." He took the pen, hands shaking slightly, and wrote, "Proud of you, always. Dad." To every soldier who's missed a moment they can never get back, know that your courage is measured not by the enemy you face, but by the cost you bear. You fight not just for your country, but for the generations who'll never know your battles.